Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I want to preface that I am a tourist. I occasionally lurk in search of a spooky story or whatever, but I was told this story, and I thought I'd share it here for other opinions. For some background, I do work in paleontology. I've often done fieldwork, volunteering, and held a couple seasonal museum gigs doing fossil prep work and such. This story comes from a previous co-worker of mine, who heard it from a museum guest. I'm going to attempt to use Greentext, but I'm slow, so bear with me. Be co-worker. Giving a tour for kids' birthday party at the museum with kids' family and friends. Kids love looking at dinosaurs and other fossils. Kid's dad is uninterested and slowly following behind. Tour done. Time for cake and presents. Head back into the gallery and see the kid's dad looking at exhibits. See that he is fixated on female Pteranodon Sternbergi mount. Approach for small talk. Small talk ensues. You know I saw one of these, in reference to Pterosaur. Talk about seeing one too, doing fieldwork digging up Pterosaur bones before. No. Like I saw one on a hike. Dad proceeds to tell coworker that back in 2009, he was on a hike somewhere in New Mexico when he ended up startling some kind of animal while it rested. Basically, he rounded a group of juniper trees and almost bumped into the thing. It was a kind of lightish gray, almost like a rhinoceros, and was furled in on itself and standing in an upright position with its head pointing downwards. It kind of jolted its head in surprise when the dad found it, and it unfurled its wings, flapped twice, and took off. The dad did not follow, but continued the hike. I will return to add extra details later, and promised some friends I would hit the gym with them. If this is of interest to anybody or anybody has seen anything similar, Pterosaur, Thunderbird, big flying thing, please share. I will return. Pic related. It's a female P. Sternbergi skeleton.
Do you have any reason to accept this as not a stork or heron other than I saw an animal for a brief flash?
OP here, back from gym, and realized I should have put the more interesting details in before leaving. Apologies, but I was pressed for time and riddled with ADHD. Here is some more context on the story. My coworker proceeded to tell me that they talked with the dad for almost 2 hours about his experience. They asked the same question, asking if it was just a stork, heron, or some other very large bird. But the dad said that when it took off, it was featherless and more of a velvety texture. He could see sunlight and veins through the wings, as well as fingers on the wings. My coworker then asked if it could have been a large bat, and the dad said no, it had a beak and a large tube-like crest, which he said must have served some purpose. He also mentioned that the beak itself was a lot shorter than the pteranodons, at around a third in size. It also sported diamond-like nasal openings.
Sounds like feathers to me. That's a great blue heron. Do you have anything other than basic desire for it to be otherwise?
OP here. I talked with my coworker for any other detail I could get, and they said the dad described it being around 5 feet 6 inches standing. It definitely could have been heron. But I'm pretty sure most people know what a heron looks like, and could easily spot feathers in broad daylight. I don't know what he saw, but he definitely saw some kind of animal. The guy drew this pic of what the nasals and the crest looked like. Very basic drawing, but interesting.
When working on an oil rig last year, we watched a flock of pterodactyls circulate a dead whale, then eat at it for about an hour. Close by is a series of small islands, which we figured they must be from. 2 nights they flew over the rig. It was legit scary. We watched them literally biting seagulls in half over this whale corpse. Could easily do serious damage to you if they attacked. They didn't seem bothered by us much. One idiot guy started to leave bits of food around in the hope to kill one to prove them real in case people thought our photos were photoshopped or confiscated. And guess what? On our journey out, they confiscated all our electronic equipment, and we were told it would be delivered separately. We knew we were never going to see our phones or cameras and USB memory sticks ever again. On the copter ride back, we asked the co-pilot some questions about these islands. He was French and spoke with basic and broken English, and explained they are banned from flying close to the islands for big bird hazards and electrical interference. This kinda confirmed what we had assumed. The co-pilot explained that he and another colleague had taken a detour once closer to the islands, and explained there is a research ship just off the coast off these islands that looked like it had been painted a gray-blue color to maybe blend in with the sea to not be noticed. We begged them to retake this detour, but he explained that each flight to and from the rig is warned very harshly to avoid any route or airspace close to there, as it is under Russian observation and a fire-on-sight rule. And he said something about submarines. We managed to salvage a few pictures between us, but we swore for our safety never to share.
Recently I had a flashback to when I was a kid and my mom told me this story about a cryptid she claims to have seen. For background, this was a dark and rainy night in the late 90s in Appalachia, northeast Tennessee, and she claims that something resembling a pterosaur landed in the road out ahead of her car, and once the headlights hit upon the creature, it glared in her direction, but had a mouth resembling a smile almost. But it flew off after that. As far as I know, there's not much in local legend or folklore resembling a creature like this. For added speculation, there's also sketchy business in the area as well. There's a local chemical company that has long rumored to be improperly dumping waste and byproducts in places they shouldn't. Fishermen claiming to have catches with multiple eyes, fins, other deformities, etc. And they have a lot of close connections in China. There is also a rumored secret military hangar in the side of the mountain that many people have claimed to have seen open up and planes shoot out. Might seem far-fetched to someone outside of the area, but this area is notorious for shit like that and has a history of weird secret military shit going on dating back to World War II regarding the work done on the atomic bomb in Oak Ridge.
It was back in the late summer of 2000, around this time of the year. There's a park and dam in a town by the name of Goshen, Indiana, that people frequently visit during the day. A friend of mine lived right near the dam, and sometimes at night we would head over there and just hang out. One clear night we decided to take a walk to the dam since there was a full moon out and it was really bright out. So we figured why not. So we walked to the dam, which was about a 5-minute walk. Once you get to the dam area, there's a long path along the top of the lake that you have to walk to get to the end where the dam starts. We were walking like normal, just talking and looking at the sky when we approached the end area of the dam. There are some steps that go down to the bottom of the dam that's usually used by people who like to fish. Anyway, we hear this loud rumbling, like the rocks moving like crazy down below. We were like, what the heck is that noise? What's going on down there? All of a sudden we hear this whoosh. It was something similar to the whoosh you would hear from a pterodactyl in a Jurassic Park movie. That's the only way I can describe the sound. It flew right at the edge of the dam, but it was too dark to clearly see it. What we did see was the outline before it swooped in the moonlight. I remember feeling the intense rush of air from its flap. I've seen a lot of birds growing up in the country and traveling to all kinds of nature parks, and this was no ordinary bird. It had a scary similar resemblance to the creeper in mid-flight with its wings in the movie Jeepers Creepers, but that wasn't the scary part. Not more than 3 whooshes from its wings, we hear the brush behind us that leads to the woods moving around. Then we hear this loud bang. Someone was shooting at it. We bolted out of there as fast as we could, sprinting back towards the parking lot at the end of the dam, when we heard this loud crash on the opposite side of the lake where we think the creature landed. We got back to my friend's house and heard police sirens. We didn't go back out, but we went the next day to see what crashed on the opposite side. There were huge broken tree branches, but nothing else. A man was outside walking around the area, and he said he lives nearby and heard something that sounded like a plane crash in the trees. But there was no sign of anything but broken trees. My friend and I talk about that thing every time we see each other. His uncle witnessed something like that in 2002 in the South Bend area. But the real question is, who was shooting at it? That's what bugged me the most all these years. But yeah, when I hear stories like it really makes you think of all the other things that are there.
Kongamatos are large pterosaur-like cryptids living in semi-tropical regions of Africa, particularly in Zambia, the Congo, and Angola. Its name means breaker of boats, or overturner of boats, as the Kongamatos are said to have capsized the canoes of natives and attacked people who ventured too close to the nearby rivers. The accounts told of these creatures are similar to the ones that describe the ropen of Papua New Guinea, as well as with several other creatures. There are several historic reports of European explorers being attacked by large winged creatures, and quite often people were reported to have received wounds from the Kongamatos. It is interesting to note that a good portion of modern Kongamato sightings happen in a prime birdwatching site, and yet birdwatchers never report anything, indicating that Kongamato may in fact be a case of mistaken identity.
The Pennine Pterodactyl. In September 1982 in Shipley Glen, William Green was startled to see a huge bird. He described it as having a wingspan of at least 6 feet, perhaps more, and that it was flying in a rather haphazard manner. He described it as gray and leathery, the wings like those of an enormous bat, and said it was eerie to look at. 3 days later, a woman saw a huge monster bird surrounded by a flock of rooks, which are quite large as British birds go, and said it was heading off in the direction of Leeds Airport. She estimated the wingspan to be around 10 feet. Soon, the local press had picked up on the story and were determined to prove that the monster was just a heron. This idea was firmly denied by a mounting number of witnesses. They were adamant. They had seen something which to all intents and purposes looked like a pterodactyl. More and more people came forward. A man walking his dog claimed that the creature had uttered a terrifying scream and had actually swooped down on him and his dog as they walked through Pudsey. It had rested on a nearby rooftop, and he described it as leathery and bat-like. He also said that he heard the labored beating of its wings as it swooped at them, as if it had great difficulty in keeping airborne. The man had thrown himself to the floor in shock as it passed overhead and said he got a good look at its crocodile-like face. Another witness saw it at Eldwick, at close range. In May 1983, various sightings took place around Thackley. Again, it was seen to take labored strokes as it flew, not being graceful like a bird. An investigator, Mike Priestley, took a photo of it, but all that can be seen is a fuzzy silhouette. Sightings continued to sporadically occur over the next year until they ceased entirely. It has never been seen again.
Modern dinosaurs. The more I research modern dinosaurs, the more inclined I am to believe that they're due to rips in space-time rather than isolated populations that survived extinction. The isolated population theory holds up for things like Mokele Mbembe in the Congo or the ropen of Papua New Guinea, but for things like the Arizona Thunderbird, Pterodactyl or Argentavis magnificens, or the Texas mini T-Rex sightings, or even Nessie, it makes less sense. Sure, the US is quite big, but having lived in Arizona, everything is visible from miles away. If pterodactyls were living down there, they would be spotted more regularly. And my own encounter with the Thunderbird, which I believed to be Argentavis, I've grown to believe was just a California condor. And Loch Ness has been trawled and examined so many times for Nessie that it either doesn't exist or perhaps disappeared. So I'm curious to see what other people think about it. Isolated populations, portals in space-time, both, neither. Anywhere you cut it, it seems like they're widespread enough that people are seeing something out there that resembles Earth's prehistoric past.
The last pterodactyl? Did those magnificent flying reptiles, the pterodactyls, die out some 65 million years ago, as evolutionists believe? Or did they survive Noah's flood and die out in more recent days? According to a report in the Illustrated London News of February 9, 1856, some workmen digging a railway tunnel in France last century between Nancy and Saint-Dizier disturbed a strange creature when they gunpowdered an enormous block of stone at Coulmont, in Haute-Marne, for the tunnel. They described the creature as having a very long neck and sharp teeth. It was livid black. It looked like a bat, and its membranous skin was thick and oily. On reaching the light, the creature gave some signs of life by shaking its wings, but it died soon after, uttering a hoarse cry. Its wingspan was measured at 3.22 meters, about 10 feet 7 inches. A naturalist well versed in paleontology immediately recognized it as belonging to the genus Pterodactylus anons. The living creature was said to have matched the many fossil remains of pterodactyls which had been found, so it was dubbed living fossil. It is of interest to note that even American Indian mythology seems to describe the huge flying reptiles we call pterodactyls. The Indians called them the Thunderbird, but the description is almost identical. Why? Perhaps because when the Indians arrived in the Americas, pterodactyls were still alive.
My father and my uncle swear they saw something like this in the late 50s in Newfoundland when they were kids picking blueberries in a field. No one believed them then, but they still hold to the story.
Please describe these sightings further.
Well, my father's story, but there's really not much to tell. Like I said, he was out in a field picking berries. He lived in a very remote part of northern Newfoundland, so when they wandered out, they were miles from nowhere. He said he heard it first. Then they both looked up and saw something that had bat wings, and he said they saw 3 points on the front of it. I'm guessing claws and beak. They didn't think it was a pterodactyl, they thought it was a devil. And they said it was flying really low, like 20 feet above them low. And they said it was huge, and that its shadow completely covered them both. It only made one pass over them, then flew off in the distance, but they ran home and never went back to that field. I believe my dad that he saw something, but time may have exaggerated its size to him. I remember when I was a kid, my mom shooing a giant moth out of our house when I was 4. I remember this moth being about a foot long. I discussed this with my mother. She says this never happened.
On October 4th, 2011, I was coming home from the Twin Cities, Minnesota. I live in Iron County, Wisconsin, not far from Cary. It was 2:30 in the morning. I was driving down my road and came down a bit of a dip in the road. Was coming back up, and to my left-hand side, they did some clear cutting and some logging out. All they left were some maple trees, and there was a big natural gas pipeline that ran right through the area. It's all clear. They keep it clean. And right about there, coming out of the west heading east, were 2 pterodactyls. I didn't know what they were the second I saw them. You know, if I had only seen one, I would have never told anybody about what I had seen. I would be like, wow, I need to go to bed. I've been up a little too long. But there were 2 of them. I don't remember if it was a full moon, but it was super bright out, so the moon lit everything up. I had the high beams on. I was the only one on this road, so when I came up out of that dip, the headlights caught them. The moonlight lit them up, and it was terrifying at first. They were just cruising right along about 50 feet off the ground. They were below the trees, and I'm guessing the trees down there aren't much more than 70 feet, the tallest ones. They were below that. When I saw the spike off the back of their heads that runs at like a 45-degree angle or so, 30-degree angle or whatever, and the 40-foot wingspan, it was like there are no cranes around here that are that big. We have sandhill cranes and some other big cranes, but they don't have 40-foot wingspans. There are swans over to the east of us on Lake Superior, but they're not 40 feet across. I mean, to this day, I didn't tell anybody about it because they would think, wow, you finally went off your rocker. I'm just like, so after that, I just kind of let it go. You can't get that thought or that picture out of your mind. I did some research on them and I was like, yeah, that's what I saw. And the more I did the research and found out about these things, I was like, I'm not going down there to wait it out and see. There was nobody with me in the truck. I had one of my dogs with me and he ain't talking to anyone about it.
I've been looking at shops on 4chan for the past 12 years or so, and know a good one when I see it. This image, however, stumps me. The blur pattern on the sides is weird. I don't know of any camera focus that does this, but then again, it could be parallel, but the top objects are too messed up to really tell. Anyway, I've done a lot of reading up on opinions. The most obvious gripe people have is the shoe, which I admit looks a bit funny, but the shadow does appear correctly on the nose of the bird. A problem I have yet to hear is about the bird's beak, as a pteranodon has a flat, straight beak, not one that curves downward. The shadow also seems to oddly be the same length on the front of the shoe as it does the back. Nevertheless, I still really can't tell if this is shopped. I do not normally /X/, but I thought a cryptid like this, and the questionable nature of this photograph would be something you guys get a kick out of. If you have not heard the story behind this, here it is in Greentext. Pic Related appears in 1960s mag. A ton of people remember seeing it. Later, in the early 2000s, a studio made an obvious fake image. Pic Related has all true-to-period clothes, including belt items of Union soldiers. The fake image circulates, and the studio claims it. Pic Related never mentioned despite being, maybe older, and clearly the pic that's trying to be copied by the studio. Everyone assumes Pteranodon photo is fake because of what the studio did. Dozens of other false positives surface. Pic Related still regarded as original by everyone who cares. Why in the fuck would a studio create a fake copy to try to obscure the image of this Pteranodon photo? Why would it matter? Why has nobody who's an expert in superimposition, the only tech around when Pic Related was first published, looked at this? If this is shooped, why is it still a better image than what an actual studio produced with a big budget and a dummy Pteranodon? Anyway, it's weird. Have at it /X/. Even better proof of the legitimacy? I mean, everything else about the bird is accurate to a Pteranodon to the T. Even the length of the wingspan and curvature of the skull. You cannot find something this accurate but at the same time with the weird beak shape on Google Images, nor any other internet image sources. The bird would have to be really good but imperfect in one singular aspect if it is faked. To get the position of the bird just right, like this one would have had to craft the dummy, put it on the ground, take a pic of it, shoop in legitimate Civil War soldiers like the ones in the original photo, and color correct the image of the bird to perfectly match the rest of the image. And through all that effort, they couldn't make the shoe look better blended? I don't get it. If I was shooping on this kind of level, I would have taken care of that problem. And that's what is so fucking weird about it.
The image you are talking about is known as the Thunderbird photograph. It did not feature an animal lying on the ground, but rather mounted behind a group of men. People have reported seeing it in various sources from the 60s right up to the early years of the new millennium. As things stand, there is no evidence of this picture ever existing either on the internet or in physical media such as old Argosy collections or Reader's Digest compilations. There are several similar images of much more recent vintage, including the one you have provided. These vary on several points like the size of the animal or the attire of the men, and each has some degree of compatibility with the well-known original image. However, none of them tick all the necessary boxes to be solidly identified as the image that generations of cryptid enthusiasts grew up seeing. Despite this clearly not being the seemingly vanished Thunderbird picture, I see no reason why it might not be a genuine photograph. I am no expert in photo manipulation, but creatures much like the one shown have been consistently reported in America and elsewhere for a long time, and a squad of soldiers could certainly bring one down with Civil War-era firearms.
The Tombstone Thunderbird. There have been no reported sightings since the 1880s, but there were a few between 1830 to 1886. The creature has been described as having bat wings, the neck of a giraffe, the head of a bulldog, 6 legs, a length of at least 50 feet, and emit a horrible, nauseating stench. Several ranchers and owners of land around Elizabeth Lake abandoned or sold their property at losses to get away from the beast. Supposedly, Spanish missionaries dubbed the lake Laguna del Diablo, an Indian legend, also supports the rumors that the devil created the lake. The first recorded sighting was by a Spaniard, Don Pedro Carrillo, in the 1830s. He built a ranch on the shores of the lake, but one day a fire of unknown origin burnt every single structure down, all in a single night. In the 1850s, American settlers tried to establish themselves near the lake, but screams at night, unnatural noises, visions, and other experiences that they would not relate drove them away. A few years later, Don Chico Lopez and Don Chico Vasquez established a ranch along the lake, and for several months everything was fine. Then the workers reported livestock and animals disappearing. This was followed by a giant winged shadow passing over every night. Soon the residents had multiple sightings of the beast. Bullets reportedly bounced off the creature's hide. As ranch hands quit and animals kept disappearing, the owners were forced to sell. The land was eventually sold and the ranch abandoned. Several months after Miguel Leonis, a burly Basque immigrant, purchased the ranch on Elizabeth Lake, the creature began eating his animals as well. But Leonis would not have it. He lay in wait for the beast and then savagely attacked it when it emerged at night. As bullets bounced off its tough hide, he engaged it closer, beating it with his rifle butt across the nose and then punching it in the eye. The creature supposedly retreated back to the lake and eventually fled to Arizona. The creature was later linked to the area around Tombstone, Arizona. A photograph was presumably taken in the early 1890s of several cowboys and ranchers holding up what appears to be a pterodactyl. The beast was apparently seen flying in the area and was lured by some ranchers into a trap in the Huachuca Mountains west of Tombstone, where they killed the creature. Some stories link the monster of Elizabeth Lake to the monster in the old picture of the pterodactyl, stating that they are the same creature. The picture apparently appeared in the Tombstone epitaph, though the original photograph disappeared. Elizabeth Lake has mostly been quiet since the encounter with Miguel Leonis. There has been a lot of speculation if the creature ever existed at Elizabeth Lake, but there is little doubt that several Spanish dons, settlers, and western ranchers avoided the location, even though it was some of the most fertile land in the area.
Long Point, Ontario, research the tip. Freemasons found something there and basically killed anyone who went too far. What were they hiding? Be me. 6 years ago. On a kayak. I'm going to the tip. Fuck 'em. No one was around. Start getting tingling in feet and hands like static in the air. Start getting a headache. Feeling like a dream. Don't know which side is up or down. Not scared, but had anticipated something the previous day when I was making plans to head to the tip. Turn the kayak around. Instantly tingling goes away. Head is clearing up. Vision normal. Fucking hell, I laughed to myself. Turn my head around one last time towards the tip. And there it is. Flying in the air at first and then landing on the beach. A literal prehistoric bird. A pterodactyl. Looks at me like pick-related. I am stunned. Tingling returns. Start getting dizzy again. Fuck this, I am out of here. Never paddled so hard in my life. Only told one guy about it who owned the cottage I was renting. You ever see fucked up creatures here? He has lived on Long Point his entire 75 years. He looks at me like he knows something is up, then rolls his eyes and smiles. Yeah, a gypsy. Maniacal old man laugh.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.